am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest, young visionary bringing new worlds to life through YA or young adult fantasy. And she is the author of the debut book, the Academy for Young Supervillains, no other than Miss Taylor A. Jenkins. Or Jenkins, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. It's good to be here. Thank you, Daniel.
Welcome, welcome, Miss Taylor. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I miss?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm Taylor A. Jenkins. I graduated college from Weber State last year with my English degree. I was really just going to learn more about writing because
Yes.
I love writing. I'm not a big fan of school, but it was great. It was a great opportunity. And right now, I am just working on publishing my books. The Academy for Young Supervillains is the first in a trilogy. Book two is coming out soon. But yeah, I'm just working on that right now, and it's been great. I'm loving every minute.
Miss Taylor Jenkins, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. The Academy for Young Supervillains immediately invests a classic trope. What was the initial spark for this idea? Was it wondering about curriculum, the teachers, or the students' motivations?
Good question. It really started because growing up, I was a big fan of Marvel and DC and the concept of superheroes versus supervillains. And I wanted to create a story that wasn't like all the others, with a character who wasn't totally a hero or totally a villain, where sometimes the world expects good or bad. There's no gray area, and I wanted to make something that was kind of more like that. And obviously, I was inspired by other stories with superheroes, but I feel like I really made this one my own. And yeah, that's just kind of where it started. I was just inspired by other superheroes, but I wanted to make something that was unique to the genre.
Inspired. That's what we like it. Miss
Yeah.
Taylor, how do you approach making young villains relatable and even sympathetic without glossing over the fact that they are training for a life of villainy?
Yeah, I think just it starts with making them human. I think everyone makes mistakes and does things that they're not proud of. And so I think highlighting that throughout the story made them more relatable. Even if you don't always agree with their actions, you know where they're coming from, and you can understand that need to be accepted or the need to make friends even if they're not the best of friends. It's the need to have someone that you can rely on. And so I think I really tried to illustrate that in this book. Just the struggles of growing up, especially in high school. It's hard, and you do and say things that you don't enjoy, and you look back on with shame. But I think just embracing that is what made these characters so relatable.
Does the Academy teach that they are the villains, or do they have a different philosophy? Do they see themselves as revolutionaries, or realists, or simply misunderstood?
Yeah, I think what's interesting is that so the Academy for Young Supervillains isn't actually teaching kids to be supervillains. It's just like a detention center for bad supers in this world. And the school teaches them that they are bad because they've done bad things, so they'll be bad forever. Like there's no second chance, there's no redemption. And so I think the students themselves see each other as misunderstood or or given up on. And the teachers, on the other hand, see the villain students as, the scum of society. They have already done crimes or done bad things or just been undesirable, so they don't deserve anything less. So I think it's an interesting concept between the students who are now believing that they don't deserve a second chance with the teachers who are telling them that they don't deserve a second chance.
What was the most fun part of designing the academy itself? Did you draw inspiration from real boarding schools, other fictional academies, or something else entirely?
I think some of it was like the the school in the X-Men stories, Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, or whatever it's called. That was always interesting to me, the idea of a super school. But I also drew inspiration from my experience in high school, just to get um, the world and the story really realistic. Even if I didn't grow up with supers, but I still grew up in that world of trying to find your place with people who you think are better than you or who have found their place and you're still kind of lost. Um, and it's very clicky. Like the Academy for Young Supervillains is very clicky. So is high school. It's hard to find your way when you don't have anyone to rely on. But yeah, I would say X-Men was an inspiration and also real high school.
X-Men indeed. I love the
Hmm.
X-Men. So,
Yes.
what does a typical class schedule look like at the academy? What are some of the most creative class or majors you invented?
So some of them, one of them is about the history of supers in this world, and it just kind of goes through like all the things that have happened to get to this point in the story. So that was interesting to do to develop the world. um, and the history. There's another class where the hero class and the villain class come together, and they have to fight each other with their powers. So that was always really interesting to write and imagine like different superpowers coming together and combating against each other. Um, but yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and not all of the villain classes are like the hero classes. You can only take music if you're a hero student. So that was interesting to explore, and all the freedoms that the hero students get that the villains don't, because the heroes are in this world more accepted. They're like I said with the villains, they're not misunderstood. They're loved essentially. So it was just interesting to kind of split them into these groups and explore it that way.
What's their teaching style like, Miss
Yeah.
Taylor?
So especially with the villain school, the teachers, most of the teachers are very degrading. They're not the nicest. There is one teacher that the main character gets to know, and he's very encouraging. He tries to get the villains to do their best and be their best, and help them know that even if they have made mistakes, they can still redeem themselves from them. They can still be loved. It's not end all be all. But yeah, so there is one good villain teacher, but the others are pretty manipulative, I would say.
Manipulative as
Mhm.
it was. So, what's their teachings? Or what? Even a school for villains must have rules. What is the unforgivable rule at the academy, and what happens to those who break it?
Oh, good question. I would probably say that there's two. If you're a villain and you try to attack a hero student without, being in gym class or anything, then that's unforgivable and you're expelled. Or if you try to escape, and that comes into play more in the story, but trying to escape the school is unforgivable and they get punished pretty harshly. So I won't spoil anything, but I would say those two. You do not want to do those two.
No spoilers, people. No spoilers.
Yes,
What is
yes.
the main conflict for your central character? Is it about embracing their destiny, resisting it, or redefining what it means to be a villain?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, at the beginning, obviously, so he is actually invited to the superhero school But when he gets there, he's switched to the supervillain school. And I think for him, his inner conflict is bigger than his outer conflict of trying to escape. His inner conflict is learning to accept himself regardless of what other people think. He was stuck in the villain school because people thought he was a villain, he was a bad guy, um, just because he's done things that aren't the best choices. So I think he has to go through learning that people will always see him as something that he isn't. And he has to learn to love himself regardless of what they think because he knows what he truly is inside. And obviously he has to go through some things to to learn who he is, but yeah, I would say learning to accept himself.
Learning for sure. So, how did you balance creating a characters that fit classic villain archetypes while still making them feel fresh and unique?
Yeah. I really just had mirrored characters. So I would have a character that is almost entirely evil, and then a character that's almost entirely good. So that balanced out, and then I've got my main character in the middle who isn't entirely evil or good. And when I had beta readers, they pointed that out. They were like, this is really great that you have these characters that are directly interacting with your character who's in the middle, because then it kind of makes them all more relatable and realistic. But I think as far as villain archetypes go, it was just a matter of doing things or making the character do things that I think he would still do, but it's always for a good reason. He does wrong things for the right reasons.
Indeed, for the right reason. Is there a rival academy for young heroes? And if so, what is the dynamic like? Is it bitter enemies, twisted respect, or something more complicated?
Yeah, so with the Academy for Young Superheroes, their rival is obviously the Academy for Young Supervillains. And there is a very bitter rivalry between them. The hero students look down on the villains because they think that the villains have made a bad name for supers in this world. That because they are doing bad things and because they are bad people, then thereby they should be punished. But there is one hero student who is one of the protagonists. Her name is Penny, and she gets along with Theo, the main character, who is a villain student. So you have a villain and a hero who are actually friends, and it's interesting to see their dynamic throughout the book because they don't hate each other. They actually really like each other. So they're very different from their classmates in that sense.
How did you approach the villains' origin stories as, or are they tragedies that led them here, or were they born with a propensity for mischief?
Yeah, I think some of them were born with it. There are some villains who enjoy doing bad things and making people suffer, but there are some who have just run into the wrong crowd or they've been stuck here because they have nowhere else to go. Um, so I think it was cool to have a mixture of all three, where not every villain has the same backstory. You know, some of them are tragic, but some of them are just evil. They're just bad people. And you do run into those people in real life. And so I wanted to have, a good realistic place like that.
Definitely. And how did you nail the tone of the book? Was it a challenge to balance the dark themes of villainy with the humor and angst of a school setting?
It definitely was. I mean, the farther I got into the book, the darker I felt it getting. And it was hard at first because I had to go to some vulnerable places to tell the story that needed to be told. Um, but I think in the end it worked out, and there were obviously some moments where I had a lot more humor, but I had to cut it because it didn't quite fit with the dark theme that the story was going with. Um, But I think just like you said, the humor, the angst, and the darkness, I think that all just relates back to my experience in school. It was hard, it was dark, but there were moments of light, and so I really tried to put that into this, but balance it in a way that it was still relatable and not ironic or coincidental.
Miss Taylor, what was the most difficult aspect of this world to get right? Was it the morality, the rules of the world, or making the villains likable?
Ooh, um, I would probably say the world was the hardest, um, because I had to make an entire history. This world is kind of like our own, but it's very different. Supers exist in this world, so I had to make an entire history with them and supers and how we got to this point. And I would say that was the hardest because I had to write about things that I didn't know about. I had to make things up completely. Whereas with characters, I can pull from myself or I can pull from other people, but the world, I had to do it all on my own. So I'd say that was the hardest, but it was definitely the most fun.
Fun, fun, fun indeed, Miss
Mhm.
Taylor. And how did you balance writing exceeding action-packed sequence with more mundane aspects of school life?
Oh, good question. I have had a lot of readers tell me that my action scenes are their favorites, which is great. I love writing action scenes. But I think we always need a breather between those scenes because if you just had action, 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 it would be a lot. um,
True.
so yeah, yeah. So it was cool to go from an action scene and then wind it down with the characters, kind of talking about it and maybe regretting their decisions during that scene. Um, and then obviously the consequences of that scene, what's going to happen because they did that. Um, so I think those conversations and those consequences were necessary to keep the action scenes grounded. Because if it was just constant action, then it would feel it would be too much.
Yes, for sure. So, did you write this book with the series in mind, or what are the largest story arcs or unsolved questions that could fuel future books?
Yeah, so when I started this book, it wasn't a series, but that was like when I first drafted the book. And then as I got more into it, I really found myself connecting to and enjoying the characters in the world I made. And I was like, this has to be a series. So, as I mentioned earlier, it is a trilogy. Second book comes out soon. Third book, I'm hoping comes out next year. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of unanswered questions at the end of this book, and a lot of unanswered questions at the end of the second book. So you just got to read all three to really embrace the world. And um, I feel like it needs a trilogy for the character stories to really arc and end in a satisfying place.
And to reveal the truth, but nothing but the truth.
Yes, yes.
So, why do you think readers are so fascinated by villain stories? What can we learn from seeing the world from their perspective?
I think it's just like you mentioned, it's a different perspective. I think it's interesting with villain stories where they can afford to be selfish, whereas heroes have to be selfless. They have to give up things that are important to them, but villains can do whatever they want essentially, and they don't always get punished for it. The biggest villain that comes to my mind is Loki from Marvel. Everyone loves him because he's so complex. He has so many layers. Yes, he is the god of mischief, and yes, he did things that were bad, but he's also, he's scared and he's desperate. And I think the emotions really make people interested in villain stories because they always have a front, they always have a wall, but once you break down that wall, then you can see how truly human villains are. And I think that's what drew me to writing about them is putting that different perspective out in the world and really hitting home those human emotions.
Yes, human emotion indeed. What larger themes are you exploring through this premise? Is about nature versus nurture, of laws of a society, or the definition of power?
Yeah, I would say those last two definitely, especially with power. Um, there is definitely a power struggle between supers and humans because obviously humans are more defenseless. They don't have powers to defend themselves. Whereas supers, because they have powers, have to limit themselves to avoid scaring humans. Um, and um, sorry, what was the second one you said?
It's power of society, or definition
Oh,
of
society.
power, flaws of society.
Yes, yes. And the philosophy of society, I think that plays a big hand into this world as well. Um, because like I mentioned, supers and humans don't always get along, and there's a history to that you'll find out more if you read the book. But yeah, it's just trying to have these young supers find themselves and learn to accept themselves in a world that doesn't really want them. Um, so yeah, I would say there's definitely a power struggle and there's definitely society struggle there as well.
Miss Taylor, who did you write this book for? Fans of superheroes comics, dark academia, or stories about misfits finding their place?
I think I first I wrote this book for myself. Um, I just wanted to prove that I could do it, and I wanted to write something that I liked to read. And the more that it's been out over these past few months, I have found other people who really like it too. Superhero fans, um, fans of misfit stories, fans of reading in general. I think it's great that because I wrote something that I enjoyed, I found an audience who enjoys it as well. So that was really great.
Truly, truly great, Miss Taylor. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please to listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Miss Taylor, what's one thing you hope readers remember most after they finish the last page? Is it a character, a twist, or thought provoking idea about good and evil?
Um, I would say first a character. I've had a lot of readers really connect with different characters, which is cool to see. I wanted to make all of my characters relatable and realistic and likable in their own ways. Um, but I want them to connect with someone so they know that there is a character out there like them that's going through struggles, but that you can get through it. And just the idea that, like I just mentioned, that there are hard things, but you can get through them as long as you have, friends or family, or just as long as you accept yourself. Like, that's all it takes.
Miss Taylor Jenkins, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. Hoping for more and more empowering books like this to come. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your Academy for Young Villains?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, pretty much wherever you get your books. And follow me on social media for more.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Taylor Jenkins because if you support her, as I've said, more and more empowering books like this to come. So, Miss Taylor, thank you so much for your time.
Of course, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
More to come, people. See you soon.